What's going on, man? Welcome.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, what's up?
Steve Aoki's here.
Is it right here?
Yeah, right there.
We just got your book this morning.
Cool.
They didn't give us a chance to read it. We came in and it was on the, so we haven't had a chance to read your book.
Pictures in there.
Well, welcome, man. Jim was just saying that the book smells really good.
Yeah, it's the first thing I do is smell a new book. So
Yeah.
creep.
Yeah, how's it smell? Like,
It's just like a new book.
yeah? That's good.
Just like a new book.
Yeah, I like it. Why'd you call it blue?
Well, it's my favorite color. It's also my last name. Aoki. Aoki means blue tree.
Oh.
And it's a good way to like have an overarching theme with this book because there's so many different shades of blue and so many different kind of like the processes of who I am. Kind of, I go through the whole thing from the beginning to, I would say not even in the last 5 years. It's more like the beginnings and a lot of the failure, a lot of like the you know, I don't know, just kind of an emotional roller coaster.
Did you fail a lot?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great. You're in a room full of them. Congratulations.
Well, you were like, I mean, in the beginning, you were kind of just a party promoter more than a performer, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, in the beginning, I was in bands.
Right.
Yeah. So I went from being in bands to starting my label to support to like find and support young bands.
Mm-hmm.
And then I eventually was throwing parties in support of the label. And then I was, that's where the party promoting came in because I had to bring people into these rooms. And then I was the DJ when I didn't know how to DJ because I was like, I couldn't hire anyone because I didn't have the money.
So you're just like, we need a DJ. I'll just do it because I'm here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because I'll open the doors.
Right.
And then I'll have like, at the time, this is like in the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the kind of music that Dim Mak, my record label, was putting out was indie rock. It's like Block Party. We put out their first, EPs, and then did the album with Vice, and then put out The Kills. So a lot of like rock and indie. So like we'd have friends come and DJ like the Yeah Yeahs or Interpol or Mars Volta or the Shins or whoever was in town, and then I would start the party, and then we'd have our own little scene in LA, and that was a very interesting time because it was all pre-social media, and there was like this convergence of all these really interesting cultures. Like it was like the indie scene, but then it was also fusing in with like when Lady Gaga first started and she was coming to like perform at our small little parties, and Kid Cudi was coming through, and I was, so we had like will.i.am and Kid Cudi and Black Eyed Peas and the start of LMFAO and the start of Skrillex and
so like when did it start? At what point did you start to go more into the dance and party world? Because it seems like those artists are way more dance music than indie rock.
So the thing is, like, there was this fusion of indie and electronic music, and LCD Sound System was a big inspiration around that time. Daft Punk.
Mm-hmm.
This was all like in probably the late 2000s when DJing started becoming more of a thing where it wasn't just about going to the club and you didn't know where the DJ was,
Right. It was just like
the guy
ambient.
who played the music quietly in the back.
Yeah. Because like you think of a DJ back then, it was like you don't think of them. Wedding DJ is like what you think about, like bar mitzvahs. Like, oh yeah, like that's where you make the real money.
Do you think those guys are good though? A lot of the wedding DJs are a lot of them not good.
Wedding DJs are amazing.
Yeah,
they're really good. They're really good. I mean,
why do you say that?
Because they know, like, they look at the crowd. They really are DJing. They're like, okay, we got the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. We got to like play to them. We got to get them off their chairs and have them dancing. And
it is true. I guess like weddings are the spots where you're gonna have like that sort of varied audience. Like if you're at a club, you have one clientele for the most part.
One age group, they're high.
Right, that you're like, this is the music that I'm going to play for them. But when you're looking around a room and you're like, I have to appeal to, there's some kids over there, teenagers, every age group you can imagine.
I mean, there's definitely some dated wedding DJs, and bar mitzvah DJs that just like, I'm like, the young guys, the young kids are like, you got to play, Post Malone too. So if they can pay Post Malone and ABBA,
Right.
I mean, they're pretty good.
But how do you get to? We have a DJ friend who's very good. He does like local weddings. He works here, but it's like to get to that next level where all of a sudden you're a little bit more known
Celebrity
as a
DJ.
a celebrity DJ. It's like, what do you have to do? Like, what's the difference between someone who just does weddings and then you go to that next level where everybody knows who you are?
Like, how do you go from Dennis Falcone, who's our wedding DJ friend, to Steve Aoki?
Well, so I mean, I'd say the number one way to actually have your own audience and not just be a wedding DJ is you get in the studio. You have to learn how to make music. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like the same reason why you would go see the Killers or why you would go see a band or a rapper or a country singer or whatever it is. You're going to go see them because you want to hear them play their songs.
Right.
So it's the same kind of concept. I mean, you know, even for me, like when I was in bands, like, you know, it's like if you could be in a cover band or you could be playing your own music. And if you take the risk of playing your own music and no one likes it, then you're probably going to start a new band. But
it's hard at a wedding to play your own music too. They all want to hear covers.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to a wedding.
Hilarious. It's time for the last dance. Here's something I wrote a couple of weeks ago about my uncle.
It's time for all requests, but before that, I'd like to play some of my stuff for you guys. Let me know what you think.
It's not quite ready yet. This goes out to the bride to be.
Yeah. So if you do that, you're in trouble, you know? But, yeah, if you're in the studio, that's why there's so many young DJs that are very famous because, you know, like this culture now starts at a very young age. I mean, you could start producing it when you're 11.
Right.
It's like a video game. It's like instead of playing Fortnite, and you can get your son or your daughter to be like, don't play Fortnite. Here's this video game-esque kind of thing where it's a DAW and you're like, look at all the colors and you can learn how to like, here's what notes do, here's what this does. And they start making music and they treat it like a video game.
Right.
Like, by the
it's
time they're
electronic
14, they're like, you know, like if everyone's playing their music, they're like, who's this 14-year-old kid that everyone's playing that's from the middle of Arkansas? You know,
You
like,
don't hear music in colors or any weird stuff like that, do you? Because like Daryl Hammond does impressions, but he hears voices in color.
Right, I've heard
He
that.
has a weird way of like kind of sectioning off sounds he hears. You don't hear it any.
I wish I did. I mean,
I don't see color personally.
That's really good.
It's funny, 'cause
really
that's
big
all
of
I
you.
see.
Now, pardon my ignorance on DJing. Is there still a thing with scratching records? Is that something like
Oh, yeah.
that
Yeah,
still
yeah.
exists?
Actually sounds just like that.
I don't know
it's
anything
actually
about it.
quite close.
Is that it?
Yeah.
That's very good. Yeah.
Not bad, right?
That's good.
There's like,
Yeah.
I mean,
What's
like,
nice though
that
is for you,
world
like you should think about DJing because you wouldn't actually need to bring the record.
Just
you could
make the sound effect.
with your
Yeah, I
mouth.
could be that guy.
Yeah.
I also do
Yeah,
the
be a
Jetsons
beatboxer.
vehicle. The Jetsons.
But how would it sound like if the Jetsons vehicle all of a sudden had a record scratch? If you want
And
to
then it
hire
explodes.
Joe List,
I'm not saying that's great, but I'm
I think
saying
it's very
pretty
good.
good.
Something.
It's something.
It's
Yeah.
something.
Oh, turntablist culture is strong. You know, it's
Oh, wow.
like, yeah. I mean, there's so many different worlds. Just like in any music genre, there's so many different subgenres of. I mean, there's a turntablist, like the technical world of scratching. That, I mean, they're so super talented. And
Right.
and this DJ from New York, A-Track, he has his own. He has an award ceremony that celebrates a lot of turntablist DJs. So there's a world for that. There's like the EDM world that you see like at the festivals where
Right.
with DJs rocking a, 10,000, 50,000 people, whatever it might be, and it's playing that pure electronic sound. There's hip hop DJs. There's so many different kinds of DJs, just like anything else.
Well, our friend is a
yeah, let's bring Dennis in. Dennis should be a
Yeah,
part of this
I'm in Troy.
conversation. Oh,
we
Dennis is right outside.
Let's bring Dennis in, but
We
also
have a lot of DJs around here.
here. Troy, is it? What do you consider? I don't want to say your band. What do you consider it?
It's like a DJ production duo. We actually just put out 2 songs on Dimmock a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
it was cool. So been a big fan of the label and big fan of Steve for many years. So
I like
Awesome,
DJ
yeah.
Tanner from Full House. That's my favorite DJ.
Sit down, Dennis.
Oh, you guys
Join
know
us.
each other.
I've never met Steve, but
Yeah.
I know people that he knows very well. So
Yeah, definitely.
So, Steve, did you have to learn electronic music then? Like, as you're DJing and you're like, oh, this is becoming something, did you then, as an adult, have to figure out, like, get
Yes.
into a studio?
Yeah.
So when you learn electronic music and you start to blow up and things start getting successful, but the genre also starts to grow, do you start looking around and being like, holy shit, there are these kids now that are coming up that have been playing since they were kids. That are, I mean, if you learn
Yeah,
something
yeah,
when
of
you're a
course,
little kid, you're going to be a master at it.
That's right.
And
Even
you're
bad
saying
habits.
That's why we have. That's why I have Dimmock. I mean, it's to foster and support and grow the culture. You know, I mean, like at first, Dimmock wasn't even putting out anything electronic. We were like rock, as I was saying. But in 2008, we made the shift when we put out this group called Mastercraft and this group called the Bloody Beetroots. And since then, for the last 10 plus years, it's been 99% electronic.
Do you get pissed off when people say that electronic musicians and DJs don't do anything? Like, does it annoy you?
It did in the beginning, but like, you know, like they don't really know what's going on. So you can't, you know, they're just ignorant, you know.
It just looks like nothing's happening. So it's like, I don't know. I guess
They don't
they'll
see all the work in the studio.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, when you're DJing, you are pressing buttons.
Right.
You know, it's not like you're stringing a guitar. You're not, you know, it's a different kind of instrument. You know, you are controlling the music, but you're not necessarily playing a guitar.
But you were in bands before you were a DJ, so it's like, do you want to be like, hey, would you shut the fuck up? I know how to play I know how to play instruments.
Yeah, but either way, even if I didn't, it doesn't really matter. It's
right.
Like, that's not my goal up there is to play an instrument. I'm DJing. So, because I know plenty of DJs that don't play instruments as well. That are extremely talented.
Denny, right there.
Hello.
Dennis is like this. He works here at Sirius, but every weekend he's making towns. He's doing DJs and bar mitzvahs and weddings and parties and everything you can imagine. But he is, like you said, like he stays so up to date. It's almost creepy with
Denny
what's going on.
Denny is very current.
He's very current.
You have to. This past weekend, I did a wedding for an Italian crowd and a Peruvian. We had more people who worked on the staff that spoke English as opposed to the crowd themselves.
Right.
And these were not Brooklyn Guido Italians. These were Italians from
Denny.
Italy. Well, I can say that because I'm a Guido.
Oh,
I'm
I didn't know.
Italian.
Okay.
I can do that. They weren't like that.
So
I had to make sure that I downloaded all the proper music so this crowd could react to their music. Plus, they also were into all the, you know.
Is Steve right, though? Do you have to look out into the room sometimes
Without
and
a
figure
doubt.
out, like, how do I get all these people engaged?
Of course. You had to play everything. I mean, I was playing, you know, Italian house music to EDM to, you know, pop to oldies, everything.
I would love to see a guy like Denny in front of your crowd because I think they would embrace him.
I actually do, too. I think that they would.
I think they would embrace Denny very much.
Yeah, because here's the thing about Denny. He embraces who he is.
Yeah.
He wouldn't try to play up to anybody. Just come on and he'd go, hello, and he'd do his,
He'd be a big hit.
and he'd do his Dennis Falcone
I just
thing.
have to, you know, you have to know your limitations, what you can do.
He always says, I got to be me.
I just got to, you know, you got to prepare.
So, like, I know with comics, at least you've said, and I don't know if you feel the same way, Joe, that, like, when you're on stage, you can sometimes fixate on the one guy who's not laughing.
Well, typically, there's always one who is.
But, like, you're like, what the fuck is this guy's problem?
Sometimes I fixate on 50 to 100 people that aren't laughing. No, I used to do that, but then I go, oh, that guy, something's up with that guy. Probably he's
You can
sad
move
or
on.
doesn't
But it's
care
hard
for me.
not
Yeah.
to make eye contact. It's hard not to look at somebody who's in
But
a,
you know
in a
what's
shit mood.
exciting is if you can get that one guy to smile or like laugh. If you
Yeah.
can get him, you're like, it changes everything.
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah. That's
I do the same thing.
Sometimes in comedy, they'll be like, oh, there's one guy, every comic is like, there's one asshole that won't laugh. And then I come back and I'm like, he liked me.
It's
You
great.
fucking losers. Yeah, it feels good.
Is that the way... I'll ask the two DJs in the room. Is that
I-
the way both of you
so-
are? Like, you see a person, you're like,
And they're not
I
dancing?
have to get this person engaged.
I think with anyone that's on a stage, you can't help but do that. Like if you're an entertainer, you want to entertain, you know? So if someone's not entertained, you're like, how do I, it's like a challenge, you know? You want to like get this guy or girl to like change their mood.
Right.
And I keep checking on them. Like I don't want to focus. I think it's really, really toxic to focus just on those people.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I do check in on them.
You glance over, but you catch
I'm
them. Yeah.
Every so I'm like, I wonder if this is gonna get them. I wonder if this is gonna get them. And if like, you know, like the fifth moment gets them, I'm like, got them.
Yeah.
You know,
What
I'm
is
like,
a
all
bomb
right, I
for a
got it. Feels
DJ?
good. Yeah.
What's bombing for a DJ? Like for us, it's no laugh. What's bombing for a DJ?
like when like you mess up? Is that bombing's a mess up, right?
Like if we're on stage and
yeah.
nobody's laughing and
Okay,
the
all
crowd
right.
hates us.
So it's usually a technical issue. It's what's called a train wreck when two songs are not matched. So the actual kicks, like you usually have a kick of doof 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 doof, right? But if like you're mixing the next song and if you don't time it right, it's like da-doo, 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 da-doo. And people are like, whoa, what's going on? I can't like do my dance moves. I can't do it. And you're like, this guy sucks. Like, so that happens to me many times. It's not as much anymore, but I mean, I've gone through the ringer plenty of times.
Have you been
like
booed?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Definitely.
You just have to practice,
Yeah.
Steve. That's it. just hone your craft.
I've had every situation that's bad that's happened to me on stage. I've had like I was on the DJ booth and I'm about to jump into the crowd and the DJ booth just collapses and everything falls apart. The equipment's on the ground. The music stops, it, like skids out, and everyone's like they don't know whether to boo or to be like, oh, like.
Then you gotta pick it up in front of everybody and plug it back in.
Yeah, and I'm like,
Humiliating.
shaking off my stuff, and I'm like, okay, let me try to make a joke, guys. So it's,
Do you have a backup computer with you? Like if you play things on a Mac or whatever, do you have a backup in case it's...
So I stopped DJing with a computer because I've had that problem, computer problems. Like I brought 4 computers one time to a show, 4. I have a tour manager that has my whole setup plus a backup, and then my setup and a backup. And it was the biggest festival of my career. It's called Tomorrowland in Europe, and for 15 minutes I could not get anything working. Everything's the spinning wheel of death on all the computers.
Oh my God!
And it was like my biggest moment. I was closing the main stage in front of 80,000 people, and the live stream was like to millions of people, and there was 15
And you're
minutes of
positive it
silence.
wasn't operator error? It was a computer issue?
I mean, just like everything was like the gods of like death came down and just said like, this ain't gonna happen for you. I mean, eventually it turned on, and one of them turned on. And
What did people do while you were standing? Because they all know that.
Wait patiently?
Yeah.
They first like start chanting your name because they're excited because you're about to go on. They're like, okay, he's about to go on, and then 5 minutes later they're like, okay, they stop chanting the name and they're like looking around. Then you hear some boos. Then you hear it just gets worse and worse, and then you just literally want to throw up.
So what do you use now?
I just have SDs like USB sticks. That's like the great thing for DJs is that you don't really need to bring a guitar with you. Like all you need is headphones and like these little
Like thumb
SDs.
drives?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you just
thumb
plug
drives.
it. They have like equipment that you plug them into?
Yeah, so you have these like they're called CDJs. It's funny because no one uses CDs anymore.
Right.
But there are these machines
Uh-huh.
or like these CD players, and they have a little thumb drive insert, and then there's a computer kind of like a screen, right? And then you just scroll through like all your songs there, and then you can be able to mix. Usually there's 4 of them, so that way you can have 4 different setups queued up, and you have a mixer that controls all 4 decks.
Is that what
looks
you
very
have, Dennis?
confusing.
What's that?
Is
I have a controller, all-in-one system by Denon.
I see.
Denon DJ, if you ever want to send.
Do you
anything
ever
this way,
have you ever
Denon.
had any of those disasters at like a wedding?
Oh yeah, sure.
What do you do? Because the wedding is almost like, I mean, I don't know if it's worse because you got all these people waiting for you, but the guy who paid you has just got to be staring daggers into you.
Steve is wrecking a night. You're ruining something so special.
Right.
I have one computer set up with their song, the other computer, with a backup,
Right.
and a thumb drive on an old digital system as well. So I have 3 fail safes.
But what happens when it doesn't work?
What's that? Well, you got 3 of them. I mean,
One of
3
them is going to work.
Yeah.
Okay.
4 speakers. I carry more microphones, and I carry a lot of backup.
You got
have
to panic though when equipment's not working in front of people. Like I can't. I've had mics go out, but again, everyone knows it's not my fault. But when you're the music person and it's just nothing's working, what panic?
You just got to bring some juggling balls. You got to
Entertain them.
You just got to figure out how to get them to smile, laugh.
Do you just talk to them while your tech guys are working on it?
Yeah. I mean, like I'll try to make a joke or two. Try to put my personality to the test, and
Now, do you ever try to do what I did? You just kind of boop, 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 boop. So I feel like that might be good.
beatbox.
And it really only gets better the more you do it.
Thank
So
you.
I
I
think
appreciate it. Yeah.
I think that could have some legs to it.
So what do you cover in the book besides just the failures? Do you cover childhood, all that stuff, or is it only about work?
It's a childhood. I cover death, my father dying, my very good friend who's also a DJ. 2009, he passed away, DJ AM. He passed away, and I talk about that. I talk about like, you know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Honestly, for me, it was very personal. It's almost like I was talking to my therapist at the same time. Like as I was writing my book, I was dealing with a lot of the process of running away from trauma, and so I do about 250 shows a year every single year, and I've been doing that for 12 years.
Jesus.
So for someone like me, I'm literally just running. I'm like a moving train, constantly going from place to place. So it's very easy for me to just go, okay, I have an issue. I'm just gonna take off. You know,
right.
That's the
you don't actually have to deal with anything.
Yeah, and I can actually move on with my life, and I'm like, okay, I don't really have to confront anything. So in the last 3 years, I spent 6 years on this book, but the last 3 years, I really confronted and I sat with a lot of vulnerabilities, a lot of stuff that was just sitting in my psyche. I don't know what you want to call it, but and it helped me understand myself a lot better. It just, you know, I think in the end, it's more for me than anybody else. And the reason why I made this book is because I made a documentary with Netflix called "I'll Sleep When I'm Dead," and
It's great, by the way.
yeah, thanks for checking it out. So that was a few years ago, and it's a very personal story. It's less about the EDM culture or me as a DJ. It's really a story about me and my dad, and then me and my mom. Really, it's just it's a story of that I think that a lot of other people can relate to, because we all have, you know, dysfunction. We might have dysfunctional relations with our family, or we want to prove ourselves to our parents or whatever it might be. So when I saw that personal, the parallels that other people were getting from the doc, I was like, I need to really kind of go into my stories deeper and talk about that.
Are you in therapy now?
Yeah. I mean, I see therapists. Yeah.
What got you into it? Was there something where you just like, oh, I got to go to therapy? Was there like one moment where you're like, I just enough?
Relationship issues, like, you know, years back, and how to like, you just need a mediator. You need like someone to come in and be like, here's, you know, I deal with this all the time. At the end of the day, most of these things everyone deals with. Everyone has very similar issues, and like, here is the healthiest way to discuss a problem.
Oh, you went to couples therapy. I've never done that. I probably should have. It's do you find that they're siding against you, or did you win some of the points?
See, you
I'd be terrified.
You're in the wrong position already. Like, that's the exact.
It's about winning.
Yeah, that's a horrible mentality.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Was there any stuff that they're like, no, you're absolutely right?
Who got the most?
What was your record?
I got 6 points.
Yeah. The therapist goes, you know, Steve might be right on this. Boom.
I'm 8-4-1 at therapy.
Yeah, did you find that they sided more with your partner or with you?
Yeah, you have to let go of that whole siding thing. Like, that's issue number one, and you have to take accountability for, you know, at the end of the day, it's just gotta stop blaming anyone else for your own stuff, and you gotta just handle your own shit.
That's
you know?
my problem.
I went to couples therapy once, and I knew it wasn't going to work for us at the time, because we went in and it was what it was. You know, we were talking, it was like an introductory thing, but there was some stuff that, oh yeah, Sam's right on that. And there was other stuff that like, oh, Jess is right. But like on our way out, Jess was like, well, fuck her. Did you hear what she said about me? I was like, okay, this isn't, we're figure this out ourselves.
Yeah, I've never done it. Did you go for but you still go? Yeah,
I see a therapist too. I think it's good for anyone just to kind of, you know, especially like, you know, for someone like me that's constantly moving. I need to, like, you know, I learned how to meditate in the last few years, like, you know, learn how to stop and reset, you know, all those things are really important for me. I think that's where this book really thrives, is in those places. So
that's interesting. I'll definitely. By the way, I just realized I lied. I have gone to couples therapy once. The relationship didn't last long after that. So I forgot. I just lied.
It's probably why the relationship didn't last long.
Yes, I was cheating and she caught me. She got me.
Is it tough, like working, especially as a younger person working towards success? When your dad was a founder of Benihana, obviously like super successful dude, and like had a lot of, you know, celebrity friends and powerful friends and everything. Right. When you've got a father that's that successful doing what he's doing, Like, is your whole definition of what you should be striving for skewed?
Yes, yeah. So I mean, when you're growing up, here's the thing though. See, like, if I grew up really under his wing, I would have a completely different life. But I grew up with my mom across the country, and she's, very traditional Japanese, very humble home. Like it was a completely different. It was like the opposite of his life. He was like, okay, I've landed on American soil. I got to be an American, so I'm going to like. The first time he made money, he was like, okay, I'm going to buy this car. I'm going to, do what he thinks an American does. Right.
Right.
My mom was just very traditional Japanese. So, it would just be like night and day whenever I would actually go on these trips with him, wherever I would go. And it was like a superhero, because like I'd wake up and we were like in the middle of a prairie, and like we're in a hot air balloon or something like that, or, doing something where we're in a different country, and I'm like, wow, I've never been out in, Europe or wherever we were traveling. And, it was definitely, you go back into Newport Beach, and it's completely different kind of life. So I mean, it was interesting. It was a unique kind of experience. But one thing that I learned from him is that one of the best things that he taught me was that he didn't actually, I think the idea is that when someone falls, like if a kid falls and you're like, okay, I got to help them pick them up. If you keep doing that, they're never going to learn. And they're never going to learn to pick themselves up, and quite possibly they'll just live at home for the rest of their lives.
Right.
That's what happens to a lot of kids that get.
But you don't really realize that until way later, right? Like when it's happening, that sucks.
Right. Yeah.
But you kind of, as an adult, figure out like, oh, this is what made me an independent person.
Right.
Right.
And so since my dad, he was never that kind of person to like, okay, he fell, I need to pick him up. All of us kids, we just had to figure ourselves out and how to get from, just the basics on. Also, he wasn't even around.
Right.
So that helps in that regard too. So I feel like for me, that was one of the best lessons, because there was times when I could have used his help in some capacity, financial or otherwise, and I had to figure it out. Otherwise, I was like really fucked.
Right.
And when I started my own business, Dimmock, my label, I was actually signing some pretty big talent. Like I was signing some really big bands. So I thought that I was crushing it, because I was like, okay, we just sold like 80,000 EPs. But then we look in the bank, and there's nothing in the bank, and then all my credit cards are overdrawn, and all of a sudden I'm like literally $100,000 in debt.
Wow.
And my dad, who's very rich, he could definitely afford to bail me out 100%.
Yeah. And he didn't.
Yeah, my mom, like I would never ask my mom. She just she wouldn't even understand like one credit card being maxed out. So.
Right.
Like I couldn't ask him at this point, because by the time I was in my mid-20s, I already knew never to ask him for money.
Would he have said no or given it to you and shamed you?
He would never give me. He would never. Actually, I remember even when I was. I remember one time I gave him a test to ship out something FedEx from his house, and when I first started the label, he wouldn't even do that. It was like $20. But he was just that kind of guy. He was a very tough love, very, very, hardened Japanese kind of businessman like that. So
we could talk to you for a long time.
Yeah,
You're an interesting dude. But the book is out, Blue, The Color of Noise. It's Steve Aoki's memoir. Check it out, pick it up. You've also got a song. I noticed the Backstreet Boys shirt. You got a song out with the Backstreet Boys, which I think is amazing. In 2019, Steve Aoki, Backstreet Boys collaboration. And it's new. It's not like it's an old song that is yet. So check that out. It's amazing, man. You're an interesting guy.
We'll be right back with.
Well, I think Dennis Falcone wanted to.
Oh, sorry.
Have you ever thought of expanding
I thought he was gonna plug
on your
something.
name by having something like Steve Aoki karaoke bars?
Oh my God.
Aoki karaoke.
Why would you?
You know,
That sounds pretty cool.
across the country where you have a guy
Or maybe
like
Steve
you know?
karaoke, but
Right.
There you go.
Carry
Because
Aoki.
I
Yeah,
mean,
karaoke.
it's-
Karaoke.
Steve
I mean,
Karaoke.
You're missing
Well-
out on a big market, I'm telling you.
Well, there was a girl when in elementary school. Her name was Carrie. Everyone would always say, "Oh, you should get married to Steve."
Karaoke.
Karaoke.
That would have been
Yeah.
fun. That would.
See, that's
Good
the way
suggestion, Dennis.
That's the way to
Yeah,
end
good
it, Denny. After
suggestion.
a good touching story about his
Yeah.
father. So
Yeah,
you want to
that's
start a
right.
karaoke bar that plays on your name?
How long have you been doing radio?
Which had 30 years.
Nice. Nice.
Want more Jim and Sam? Catch up with full episodes and interviews from celebrity guests anytime on demand using the SiriusXM app.